Johnson. I am the director of the Parks and Recreation Department in Lincoln, and we want to say welcome to Nebraska's Centennial Mall. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for this event celebrating dedication of the new sculpture recognizing Ponca Chief Standing Bear. It is fitting that this dedication is one of many signature events across Nebraska this year, celebrated in celebration of our state's 150th anniversary. The legacy of Chief Standing Bear is a Nebraska story of national significance. Please join me in thanking the New Breed singers and dancers for providing the music as we gathered this afternoon. We'd like to recognize elected officials and dignitaries here this afternoon. Nebraska State Senators, I think I saw Senator Pansing Brooks. If you would please hold up your hand. Are there others? Here, I know that Senator Brewer is here as well. Lincoln City Council members. Any Lincoln City Council members this afternoon? I saw, here we go. Councilman Raybold, Councilmember Eskridge, Councilmember Christensen is here as well. Any Lancaster County Board of Commissioners members here this afternoon? Oh, Congressman Shobe, I apologize. I did not see you. Right there. Thank you. And finally, any school board, Lincoln School Board members. Barb Beyer. Barb, thank you for being here. Chris Butler serves as Lincoln's 51st mayor, serving from 2007 through the present. Mayor Butler is a native Nebraskan who has devoted much of his life serving the city of Lincoln, the people of Nebraska, and our nation. He served in the Nebraska legislature representing Central Lincoln's 28th district from 1978 through 1986 and from 1990 through 2006. I know Mayor Butler to be a strong proponent of quality public spaces and public art as vital components of Lincoln's unique identity and quality of life. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Chris Butler.
Good afternoon, everybody. Are you feeling good? You should be. Yeah. October has come again with its promise of some cool, sunny days and beautiful trees everywhere and bushes and the land which the Native Americans nurtured for so long for us. I want to thank you all today for joining us on the mall. I hope you think the mall looks good. I know you think the dancers were great. Give them another hand. If you will. The mall, I think, will always be a work in progress because it's about us. And the revitalized mall, I hope you think, is getting more interesting and more beautiful as time goes by. Today, of course, we're adding an incredible jewel to the scene, this monumental statue of Standing Bear, the Ponca Chief. An ongoing goal for the mall is to collect and display the stories of the people and the places of Nebraska. And you will see more than 100 stories now displayed in granite and bronze panels along the walkway between the Capitol and the university. And we plan to add more stories as we move forward into the future. Chief Standing Bear's story, of course, is arguably the most compelling one of all. This sculpture alcove here was in the original plans for the renovation of Centennial Mall, and we envisioned long ago a significant work of public art here. And Standing Bear turns out to be the perfect fit as a state and as a national symbol for human and civil rights. It's also fitting that this sculpture happens to be near the UNL College of Journalism here behind you, and journalism and mass communications. It was the Omaha Daily Herald assistant editor Thomas Tibbles long ago, and other journalists of his era who made the public aware of Standing Bear's trial and brought this story the national attention that it got. I also want to recognize and thank Judy Gashkabath for her vision of the statue. She, more than anyone, made this happen. She and people like writer Joe Starita have done a great job of keeping the Standing Bear story alive for future generations. I also want to thank Don Miller Campbell for sharing Judy's vision and for providing the generous funding that did in fact make it happen. Thank you, Don. And finally, I want to thank and congratulate the sculptor, Ben Victor, for his talent and for his hard work in creating what is, I think, an exquisite representation of the vision, one that will be treasured by generations to come. And by the way, you missed a treat if you missed the event at Union Plaza where they actually were doing some of the sculpting and allowed students and all citizens to come in and be a part of the vision. It was a tremendous experience. Thank you, Ben, for that and for the statue itself, of course. On a more serious note, Standing Bear's story of bravery and of determination and of heroism, a forced removal to Oklahoma, a grueling journey back to Nebraska, and the historic trial that resulted in Native Americans being recognized as a person under the Constitution. Let me just say, as briefly as I can, what I think the incredible genius of Standing Bear was, and it was this: totally without political power of any sort, totally without military power, with the hardened veterans of the Union spreading out across the West, no military power. He learned his way into the intellectual and emotional heart of the post-Civil War republic, and he attached himself to the underlying ideas of our founding fathers that all men are created equal, and the resultant constitutional embodiment of that sentiment, which is in part equality before the law. He distilled it down further into the simple, powerful phrase you see on the wall: I am a man, the same God made us both. That's what it's all about. Welcome today.
Thank you, Mayor Butler. Senator Tom Brewer is a retired U.S. Colonel with over 37 years of service, including 2 Purple Hearts. He is a member of the Ogallala Lakota Sioux tribe who grew up on and near the Pine Ridge Reservation. Senator Brewer was elected in 2016 to represent the 43rd District to the Nebraska Legislature. He is the first state senator of Native American descent to serve in Nebraska's unicameral. Senator Brewer.
It is sad that it took 150 years, but I will tell you that the job of state senator has been both educational and in some ways shocking, because it has been a process of understanding that many of our issues are oblivious to the population of Nebraska. So part of what I have taken on as my personal responsibility is to share those issues, to try and educate as best we can the people of the state of Nebraska about that path ahead that shouldn't be as difficult as it's been in the past. But I would be remiss if I didn't start by recognizing Senator Patty Pansing Brooks. Patty has been there before I was there. Now, anyone that has been around tribal politics knows how difficult it is for a woman to be in a position of authority and to be able to do things without running into a lot of barriers. Well, if you're not Native and you're trying to do some of the things that she's trying to help folks better understand about Native culture and issues, it's even a more difficult barrier, and she has stood tall. And from the time I walked in those doors, she has been a coach and a guide to help me to better understand how to work things and how to get things done. The success that we've had this year, whether it be the license plate or the day to recognize Standing Bear or what we have been able to do in White Clay, that credit needs to go to her as much as anyone. Thank you, Patty. Now, so everybody understands up front, I am a lousy politician. I have no background. I was not a banker. I was not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor, a CEO, none of that. My life was served wearing the uniform of our country. And there are downsides to that because you tend to be very focused on completing missions. I have no doubt in my mind that if Chief Standing Bear could speak now, there are wrongs that needed to be right that he would have wanted to see changed. And White Clay was one of those. I have taken plenty of hate mail and threats over it. But looking back on it, I have no regrets, because if you had ever been there and you had seen the travesty, which I saw as a child growing up, it needed changed. It was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. And people looked the other day. They looked the other way for one purpose and one purpose only, and that was money. And what you find out when you come in the unicameral is that it's easy to become invisible. It's easy to get elected. Well, it's not easy to get elected. I rode 500 miles on a mule. But the thing you realize is if you just fade into the shadows and you do nothing, there's probably a pretty good chance you get reelected because you didn't do anything wrong. But I believe that we are given a small bit of time on this planet to make a difference. And I thought that I had probably made the difference that I was going to make with my service to my country. But when I finish and look back on my life, it was finding, fixing, and destroying the enemies of our country. And that's fine and well, but I still was operational. And about a week after I retired, they called and said, on your exit physical, we determined that you had leukemia. And that started a long battle. And when I finished that, I decided to run for the legislature, so you can see that when it comes to fights, I'm good with that. That's what we're here for. Now, I will tell you that this last week, I was disappointed. They called and said, listen, the test that we had from this past visit indicates that you may have to start the fight with leukemia again. But that's part of life. That's what you do. But again, we have a small window of time to make a difference. So we're going to continue to take on these challenges because that's what Standing Bear would have wanted us to do. He showed the courage to make a nation see a people as they should have been seen from the beginning. So as you watch events unfold, understand that when I say that, Patty and I will continue to fight the good fight. We thank you for the kind words and the support, because there are days when that's what makes the difference, to give you that adrenaline to keep things going forward. So with that, I thank you for this day.
Thank you, Senator. Don Miller Campbell is an international businessman with extensive experience in corporate finance. Don's roots in Nebraska run deep as a native son of Lincoln. Don's family founded and operated Miller and Payne department store for more than 100 years. He is a graduate of the University of Nebraska and Stanford University. We owe Don a great debt of gratitude for his gift of the statue of Ponca Chief Standing Bear, which he dedicates to all Native Americans and to all Nebraskans. Don?
I'm going to start. Excuse me. I'm going to start my few remarks by apologizing in advance, because I may tear up a little bit before I finish this, because the message that I would like to add to the wonderful words you have heard and are going to is that while the story of Standing Bear and the Ponca is indeed a story of hardship and unfairness and injustice, it's also a story of love and compassion. I'd like to just comment a bit on that, because it was those journalists that were mentioned, and it was the lawyer that defended Standing Bear in that famous court trial that gave their time and effort. This is love and compassion to make so that Standing Bear could continue on his trip back up to his homeland with his son's body. And then also, the Ponca tribe suffered so terribly in the removal that approximately, I guess, up to a third of the tribe died on that terrible trip, and in the time shortly after that when they reached Oklahoma. And one of the early deaths was a little girl called White Buffalo Girl. And when she died, her father, who wanted so badly to see her honored and buried properly, knew he couldn't do it because he would be forced to move on at gunpoint. So he asked the people of that little town if they would please take her and give her the sort of burial they would give one of their own. And they did that. And they have this little beautiful cemetery up on top of a hill near that town. And her grave is there. And over that grave is a very handsome headstone with her name and with the words of her father asking for that support. And that grave is heaped with flowers and little stuffed animals. It's been well over 100 years, and they're keeping that promise. So this is a story of love and compassion as well as that. So, the building of a nation and it's keeping the promises of its founding ideas is a work in process, and it's a work still going on. But this represents one of those wonderful pieces of that. We have up at the Capitol a statue of Abraham Lincoln, who was responsible for the preserving of this union and for the granting of the rights of citizenship to our African Americans. And so this represents another step in that story. It's not a finished product. We're still going on, but this is a wonderful step in that. So I'm just so delighted to have been part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Benjamin Victor is a noted American sculptor and is currently an artist in residence and professor of practice at Boise State University. At age 26, Ben became the youngest artist to ever have a sculpture in our nation's foremost collection, the National Statuary Gallery in the United States Capitol. He also has the distinction of being the only living artist to have two works in the National Statuary Hall. Ben's figurative sculpture is noted for expressive features, exquisite detail, and thought-provoking content, and I am certain when this is unveiled, you will see that. Ben?
Thank you so much. What an honor to be here today. It's been, an interesting and long road studying the life of Chief Standing Bear. But when I think back to the beginnings of the project and getting the call about this man and not really understanding the story and not ever hearing it, it's just so moving today to see this many people here to see the unveiling of the sculpture, and this many people that I assume know that great story. Great and tragic story, really, because you think about, as they were saying earlier, being forcibly led across the country to a land you didn't know, a land you didn't want to go to. And I got the opportunity to go with Chairman Larry Wright to their tribal grounds, and it just brought so much more meaning, even on top of reading Joe Storita's book and studying Standing Bear's life. I think if you're not emotionally moved by that story in that book, there's something wrong with you, seriously. And I think the Nebraska public agrees with how the story turned out, and he was granted that triumph at the end of the story. But like the previous speakers said, the story doesn't end there. I went back up there to Niobrara and I saw the land where he walked, and I thought about him recently, and I met some of the tribal members, and there's many descendants here today, many relatives of Chief Standing Bear, and it's a great honor just to see all the Native American faces here today in support and solidarity with this great story. Because really, to me, Chief Standing Bear and his story, it is a big picture thing. It works on so many levels. You've got the idea and in the story of him keeping a promise to his son, keeping a promise to his people, and then the larger representation of the Ponca people, being granted, winning that case and becoming recognized as a human being, which that concept just blows me away when you think back. I mean, that's not that many years ago, in the 1800s, that a whole group of people weren't even considered human beings under constitutional law. That moves me. I mean, I have to stop right there even and just say that if you think about that and what the law really means, I guess there's two types of law. There's a moral law and there's a constitutional law, a written law. And that moral law always supersedes everything. And that's what I felt when I went with Chairman Wright up to the tribal grounds, is that there's a great moral law that humankind, that people have been living by, a common thread that has developed over all these years. And you think of that, and that's really what Chief Standing Bear represented when he put his hand out in that courtroom. And he captured the minds and hearts, not only of the courtroom, but of the general public. And the people pushed to have the laws changed because it was the right thing. So when we think about that, and when you look at the artwork, that's what I'm really trying to say as an artist. I'm trying to do my part with my media, like Joe did with his book and his media, to tell the story of Chief Standing Bear. And I hope that this story goes on to greater and greater stages. But this is a big and a wonderful start in the medium of sculpture to get him and his story the attention that it deserves. And so, along this process, I got to meet some wonderful people. And I always say that when you do these kinds of projects, it's very humbling. And once or twice I've had a few people ask me, well, what do you mean humbling when you go up there to speak about your sculpture? How is that humbling? Well, it's because of the subject that I'm representing. And I've never been in a more humble moment than working on this sculpture and getting to speak about him and his life. Because when we all compare ourselves to the life of Chief Standing Bear, I mean, what do we do that's really heroic and courageous, and that's kind of the thoughts that go through my head. And I met so many good people through the process because they all stood up, and whether it was Don Campbell funding this project or Judy coming forward with the idea for the project, or the Parks Department coming together, or the arts community with George Newbert, and just everybody all the way from the state to city, all the way along, and the whole committee and the whole group. It's really been wonderful, and like I said, that culminated with Chairman Wright taking me to the tribal grounds. And so I have a few really small gifts here. They're not a great token, but they're special to me. These are actually the core drilled pieces of the base that he's standing on from when we installed him. So I have 4 of them, and I want to give one to Chairman Larry Wright as a representative of the Ponca tribe. I want to give one to Judy as a representative for the native peoples of Nebraska and of the state, and one to the city, and then one finally to Don Campbell for funding this whole project. And thank you so much. It's just been an honor to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Judy Goshkabas has served as the Executive Director of the Nebraska Commission on Indian Affairs since 1995 and is an adjunct professor at the UNL College of Journalism and Mass Communications for the Native Daughters Project. Judy is a descendant of the Ponca and Santee Sioux tribes and is a member of the Ponca tribe of Nebraska. Judy is passionate about sharing the story and the legacy of Chief Standing Bear, and as you've heard, Judy provided the vision for the sculpture that we dedicate today. Judy?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to the New Breed Singers that gave us that beautiful music from the Winnebago. And today's the day to celebrate for all of our tribal people and our tribal leaders that are here. I know the Omaha chairman, Mike Wolf, is here, and many others that I haven't been able to see you all. I cannot believe the turnout today. I am so proud to be here with all of you and with many members of my family, especially my daughters, Katie and Jackie, and my 4 grandchildren, Rowan, Sophia, Evan, and Jacob, and their fathers, Ryan and Jackson. I share today with you, with all of you, I share my family. My grandfather was born in 1878, and when he lived down the road from Standing Bear, and when Standing Bear died, my grandfather was 30 years old. And I remember as a child knowing my grandfather, and he was my hero, and I really didn't know the story of Standing Bear. But I remember what it felt like for my grandfather for our tribe, the sadness that we felt. And today, I think my grandpa would be so happy and so proud that all of our people can feel a part of our world here today, and that we don't have to be seen and not heard, and that we're not invisible, and that we are strong and we are courageous, like Standing Bear. I cannot imagine a more beautiful place and location for this art, the public art location that was already here when I had this dream many, many years ago. And in life, sometimes things happen where you're at the right place at the right time, and others make your dreams come true. And there were so many people that came together to make this happen. So I want to give gratitude to the Lincoln Parks and Rec and the Lincoln Parks Foundation, the mayor, my dear friend Mayor Butler, who I worked with when he was a state senator for many, many years, and also to our donor, Don Miller Campbell. I went to Doane as an undergrad and received my master's there while I was the director of the Indian Commission as a single mother. And it was a long journey, like Standing Bear's journey. But 5 years ago, I met our donor, and he didn't really know the story of Standing Bear. But through our friendship, he learned, and he became very passionate about this and felt it was something that he wanted to support. So we all need to thank Don Campbell for making this a reality. As we stand in the presence of this monument, I feel resolute, a sense of rightness about the story that has brought us to this moment in time. What began as a private act, a father honoring his son's wish to return home, culminated in a courtroom with a public plea before a federal judge and a monumental change in United States law regarding the nation's first peoples. So many acts of courage, both known and unknown, are part of this story. And today, that is true as well. So many people that have participated in this journey to bring this to all of you are really unknown. Certainly no act of courage was greater than that of the man entering a courtroom as a plaintiff, where his very right to be considered a person was held in the balance. Standing Bear's plea to the U.S. court and to all people present that day resonates today for all humanity. His acts of courage are a point of pride for Native Americans and for all who believe that diversity, equality, and equal opportunity are what makes America great. It is a message for all people to hear and consider, to know and to remember, to follow and to keep in their hearts. Essential, steadfast. I believe this place where we are gathered today will someday be a place where many of you will come to find strength from the spirit of Standing Bear. And this will become a hallowed place where all who visit will feel strength and inspiration. I call this feeling Standing Bear Strong. And today I stand for the women and children, Bear Shield, White Buffalo Girl, Prairie Flower, all the children here today, those in the past and those in the future. As Nebraska citizens, we share the hope that many visitors from around our state, around our country, and the world will come to know and respect this story, and in the doing, they will feel Standing Bear Strong. Weeblaho.
Thank you, Judy. Chairman Larry Wright Jr. is currently serving his second four-year term at the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska's, or as the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska's tribal chairman. Chairman Wright is the elected representative for the Great Plains region on the executive board for the National Congress of American Indians. He currently serves as a commissioner on the Nebraska Commission on Indian Affairs as well. Chairman Wright.
Aho, Ponca Moshe Wongide. Ombele wiki they go, they know hikte, Wiblahon. Ponca Moshe, Hanashma de, Wanoke, Hijajik de Abli, Wishdi, Ushli Ponca Bli. Ado, Nioshinga, Ishage, Waunjiga, Edidagi, Daon Wagidaga. I thank you for allowing me to speak here today. Ask my elders for forgiveness for speaking in front of them. My Ponca name is Buffalo Spirit, and I'm from the Ponca Nation. And it's an honor to be here as tribal chairman and speaking on behalf of our people. It was a great honor to meet Ben and Don at the beginning of this process, and knowing what they were undertaking and talking about honoring one of our own, and the story that this has become, not just Standing Bear in that time frame, but the fact that we're here 140 years later still talking about what happened at that time. And we've honored that this year, and it's I guess I don't think you can make that up, where we're here today in that 140th year anniversary when our Poncas were removed to Oklahoma, where the state of Nebraska didn't want our Ponca people here, where the federal government included our tribal homeland in a treaty and saw no way to make that right. But yet we're here today, still talking about that. And this monument and the great work that Ben has done to this, for this, speaks volumes about where we are and who we are as a people. And throughout this time, we hear stories of, and examples here today, nobody knew this story. And not very many people know the fact that our tribe, once we got back here, we were terminated in the 1960s, told that we were Poncas no more. And those of you that have heard me speak before have heard me say this, but this is our story, and this is where we've come since Standing Bear, and why we're still here. In 1990, the tribe was finally restored as a federally recognized tribe to give back to what we were. When I was born, the Ponca tribe of Nebraska didn't exist. When my father was born, my relatives, our ancestors, when they were born, they were Ponca. When I was born, didn't exist. But when my children were born, they're Ponca. And that's who we are today. We've come full circle. And it wasn't just the Poncas working on our own. It was through the help of others that have come together, that have heard our story, heard the wrongs, and helped us, and help us get back to where we are. And we're very thankful for that. We're very thankful for those that have heard that story, have been moved enough to want to do more. Joe Starita and his book was a catalyst for that. And I know he's taken his fair share of criticism, as a non-native talking about a native story. But without him, without that voice, many of you wouldn't be here today. We may not be here today. Many things have been done because of what happened on that with that book, and not just because I'm quoted in it. I know that made it better, Joe. He could have quoted me more, but I won't hold that against him. But a little levity, I guess. But again, that's where we are. And even with our story of our Ponca people and Standing Bear and those that followed him coming home, it was the help of others. It was the help of non-natives that made that possible, that made it so that the Poncas could get back to Nebraska, get back with our Omaha relatives. And I thank Chairman Mike Wolf for being here today, as chairman of the Omaha tribe, being here today to honor us. And all of those, yes. And I want to thank all the tribal members from all the nations that are here today. It's good to see you here and support, because this isn't just about Poncas. It's about all the natives and becoming human beings. We know we are human beings, but it took a court case to further that. So as we're here today to honor our Nudahanga, Machunaze, Chief Standing Bear, it's a great honor for the Poncas to have our story be told. And I've used this quote this year as we did our remembrance walk earlier this year in April and May from Niobrara down to Beatrice for land that was donated to the tribe that consisted of the original trail of our Trail of Tears when we were moved to Oklahoma. But this statue and the work that's gone into it and the stories that have been told, and all of you here today, this quote that I've been using this year: our ancestors will live forever as long as we honor and teach their history. And that's what the Ponca tribe has strove to do for our own youth. But those others that have come together to do things like this will go a long way in the history of our people and all natives, in the history of Nebraskans that have come together to see this. And we thank all of those that were involved, especially Don and Ben for all your work, Judy for starting this, and all of those that are here to honor what we're Standing Bear and what he represented and what he went through and what our people went through to get here and be here today. So we thank you all for those things. And I just wanted to say to Ben and Don, it was an honor to be with you in our homeland and showing you where our people called home, and we still call home, and where Standing Bear, his last allotment, his land was, where his gravesite is. And this is how much we like this statue. I appreciate the time when we first sat down, and Judy said, "I'd like you to meet, we have an idea, and we'd like the Ponca support." And we started talking about this, and I said, "I like the idea so much, I'll agree to it on one condition: you let us have a copy." So we're so fortunate to have this here so that as many people as possible can see this and hear this story. But we're even more thankful that they agreed to it, and we're going to have a replica of this up in the homeland. Where Standing Bear can forever look over his gravesite, his land, as it should be. And with that, I want to say I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize those descendants of Standing Bear that are here today. So I'm going to put you on the spot, and I apologize. But we're here to honor him and his family. So I'd like those descendants of Standing Bear to stand or raise their hand, please. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. And thank you all again for for being here today and for doing these things and for all your great work and your generosity. Katega, Widlong.
Thank you, Larry. Congressman Jeff Fortenberry represents Nebraska's 1st Congressional District in the United States House of Representatives. He was first elected to this position in 2005 and is now serving in his 7th term. Prior to serving in Congress, Jeff worked as a publishing industry executive in Lincoln, where he also served as an at-large member of the Lincoln City Council from 1997 to 2001. Congressman?
Thank you, Glenn. Well, I want to do this one more time with you face to face. How many of you dealt with Judy Goshkabosh directly? How many of you ever had any interaction with Judy? Okay. Now, how many of you have ever been able to tell Judy Goshkabosh no when she has an idea? It's unanimous, Judy. I want to start by thanking Judy. She's a steadfast leader. She's dedicated, she's passionate, she's calm, she stays with it, she gets the job done. I'm so grateful for your leadership and friendship for our entire state. Thank you, Judy. I want to also acknowledge the leadership of our mayor and my good friend, Chris Butler. Among all the difficulties in running a city, he has an extraordinary sensitivity to the nature of what public space ought to be. And under his tenure, you're seeing Lincoln build out in the most extraordinary ways and creating the sense of place so that our narrative as a community can hold with beautiful artwork and beautiful plantings and gathering spots that really hold a depth of meaning. Thank you, Mayor Butler, for your leadership. I want to also acknowledge State Senator Tom Brewer, Colonel Brewer, as I call him. You know, when he was giving a little bit of insight into his autobiography, he left something out. I may have lost count of the number, Colonel, so forgive me if I'm off, but he's been wounded 5 times in battle. Colonel, 6. Colonel, thank you. In fact, he wasn't real interested in politics. He wanted to stay in the military. They made him leave. Thank you, Colonel, for your service. We really appreciate it. And finally, Professor Victor, welcome to Nebraska. Can we claim you as an honorary Nebraskan now? Yes. Thank you for your good work. And Don Campbell, thank you for your generosity. Your family is rooted here in the Prairie, and that legacy continues with your work today. Thank you so much. Chairman Larry Wright, my friend, a rising star in Native American politics, a young leader, the next generation of leaders. He has a depth of commitment and generosity and strength of spirit that makes his authentic character and leadership invited, not just to the Native American peoples, but to all peoples who share in the same vision of dignity for everyone, celebration of diversity, as you rightly said, and an ongoing need to continue to recognize the first Americans. Thank you, Chairman Wright, for your dedicated leadership. And as he said, when he was born, there was not a Ponca tribe, but now there is. And by the way, he is self-taught in the language. He learned the language as an adult, and that is very impressive. Thank you so much. You all know the story of Chief Standing Bear. It is one of strength and courage and dignity. And we as Nebraskans together now have another opportunity to make a public statement with what I anticipate to be a very beautiful sculpture so that we can continue to tell the story and to remember his presence into time, not only for ourselves, but for generations to come. Thank you all. Pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you, Congressman. We'd now like to ask Judy and Don and Larry and Ben and Tom to come up to do the unveiling. I think this is the point in the program that we've all been waiting for, right?
I'd like to ask the descendants if any of them would like to come up and help us to unveil Standing Bear. I hope you all really like him. I think he's quite handsome, and beautiful.
It should just pull forward.
Pull forward towards the crowd.
Oops, sorry.
I think there's no question, this is now sacred ground.